I'm back. Episode 4. Been here for a while now. It's pretty cool. Thanks for tuning back into another episode. I've been really enjoying being a part of this community. I feel like there's a definite community on this channel now, which I've been finding just so much joy in. So thank you for returning if you're new. My name is Charlotte. I am a maker, knitter, aspiring sewer, just an individual, I guess, who is putting some things out on YouTube about those things. I'm based out of the Washington, Seattle area. I live with my dog, Lady. You might be able to see her back here. She's chewing on a bone. And this is my little corner on the interwebs where I talk about some of the things I've been making. I do a lot of knitting. I really want to get into sewing. I enjoy photography and travel and food and socializing. So this channel is mainly about the knitting and the making, but I do enjoy a lot of those things as well, so sometimes there's some other content sprinkled in about some of those other things. Speaking of which, I wanted to give a huge thank you to everybody who left such nice comments and who gave my last video a thumbs up. It was very different than this format of video. It was much more personal, it was very short. It was just something that I felt the urge to make, and it was very personal to me and some of the things that I had been thinking about and going through in my own personal life, and I felt like I wanted to capture those things in the form of a video, and so I put that together, and I'm so happy that it gave some of you encouragement and that I was able to connect with some of you on those things, because I do think those are important things that young people, but all people who go through life experience at one point or another. So I'm happy that we could have that moment together and that will be there for you if hopefully in the future you can use it for encouragement again if you need, because we're all on this path together in some shape or form. So the format for these videos, I like to talk about the things that I've finished, the things I've been working on, and sometimes I'll dabble in, what I plan to be working on, but I like to keep it to what I've finished and what I'm currently working on because my plans change all the time. We'll start off with what I'm wearing. I am wearing my finished Calypso sweater. This is a pattern by Black Cat Knitting. This was such a joy to make. I really, really enjoyed making this. It was my second colorwork sweater, and it was my first time using Spin Cycle yarns. And I think, I saw Happy Go Knitty pattern of this on Instagram, and I immediately thought, I need to make that. And so I'm very happy with how it turned out. I'll insert some footage of me wearing it. I want to talk about some of the modifications I did to this pattern to make it fit the way that you're going to see it fitting in the footage. And the first one that you'll see in the footage is I made my yoke much deeper than what the pattern indicated. This is something that I think the more you knit, the more you make things, you just start to know how you need to modify things in order to make it fit the way you want it to fit. Because we can all, I think, admit that whoever designs patterns, you're ultimately making them in the way that you would want them to fit. And that's not always the way that is best for everybody. So I think it's totally okay, and you should feel empowered to modify patterns as needed to make them really suit you and something that you're going to want to wear for the rest of your life. But the first thing I did was I made the yoke much deeper. I'm very tall. I think as I've said before, I'm 5'10", and I have a very long torso. And so things can tend to be bunched up in my armpit if I don't accommodate for that. So I think I added maybe another inch or so to the yoke of this sweater after the colorwork motif was done. And that was something that I just had to do until I felt like it was at a place that I was happy with. And that entailed taking it off the needles, trying it on as I went, until I felt like I was happy with where the armpit of the sweater would hit me. The ultimate reason I do extend the yokes usually in these types of sweaters is because if you don't make the yoke deep enough, it can have a tendency to the fabric will interact with the sweat in your armpit, and it'll actually felt your fabric, and felting will like shrink up your fabric, and so it can really change the fit over time. It can change the texture of the stitches, and in general that's just something that I want to try to avoid when I'm making something. The other thing that I did was I opted for a folded over collar. In the pattern, she calls for a picot edge, which I'd never done a picot edge. They wanted a picot edge on the collar as well as the hem of the sweater. I just opted for a twisted rib hem and cuff and then a folded over collar. And I did that because, again, it comes down to personal taste. I think that a folded over, simpler collar is something that I'm visually more drawn to, and it was a very easy modification. The next thing I did, I left the sleeves straight with no shaping. There's no decreases coming down the sleeve here, it's just all straight. I think this is something I kind of played by ear. I felt like the width of the sleeve at the top of my arm was a really comfortable width and not something I would have wanted to change a whole lot. I want a more relaxed fit. I don't like fabric that's incredibly tight on me or has 0 to negative ease. Especially with mohair, it can tend to feel very itchy and sweaty. And so I wanted something loose and relaxed fitting. So I just opted for straight sleeves. And I think it came out nice. The last thing that I did for this sweater was, well, there was 2 things actually. I opted for, firstly, no color work on the cuffs and no color work on the hem of this sweater. In the pattern, they have a little bit of color motif happening at the very end, and I just opted to not do that. Again, you could do it if you wanted to. I just chose not to. And then the cuff of this sweater, I think I talked about this last time in my episode 3, but I was having a little bit of difficulty with the hem. I had knit the hem 3 needle sizes smaller than the rest of the body. It just made it cinch in too much. I think if I had actually done the picot edge, I wouldn't have had that issue because the picot edge is a very different hemline than a twisted rib. A twisted rib cinches much more than a picot edge would have. So I ended up ripping out the hem after I had finished it, and I knit it in a US 4, so just 1 needle size smaller than the body. And it made for a much more relaxed and straight fit, which I was very happy I did. And I ended up doing that for the cuffs as well. So the cuffs are very much in line with the main fabric of the sleeve. They don't cinch in at all, which I'm very happy about. Whoa, girl. Chill. Growling at something. Just let him. Let him. It's okay. He's freaking out about something. The last thing I'll say about the finished product, well, the last couple things. One, I'm very happy with it. I think it's probably one of the most beautiful things I've made. I ended up color managing all of the 3 different spin cycle yarns. I think it turned out really well. I got the exact gradient that I was wanting. I didn't want a color surprise anywhere, so I'm happy I did that. The one thing I will say is I chose the Magpie undyed non-superwash yarn for the main body, and I held it double with a Malabrigo silk mohair. I was very happy with both those yarns. However, the composition of those yarns were very different than the spin cycle. The spin cycle is a much lighter sport weight yarn, and it's a superwash yarn, which means that it's been processed more. And so it has, I would say, significantly less strength or durability to it than the combination of the main fabric that I have. So what that means and what I'm trying to say is that the collar of this sweater, just this brown part really, feels a little bit floppier and less structured compared to the rest of the sweater. I don't know how that will go in terms of like wear and tear on this. I don't think I'll end up really noticing it, but it is something that, you know, it feels a little bit like the neck is a slightly less structured than the rest of the sweater. So I don't really have a solution for how to combat that. I think the whole sweater would have felt a bit more maybe balanced if I chose a yarn that wasn't as rustic or had as much staying power as the Magpie Corriedale Sport does. But I definitely loved using those yarns, so I wouldn't necessarily change any of the yarn I picked. Just telling you that's kind of something that I noticed. The top of the collar is a little bit thinner in comparison to the rest. You expect the colorwork motif to be thicker, but even the main fabric is like significantly sturdier than the collar. So hopefully it holds up okay over time. Even if it doesn't, I think I'll just have to take extra care when I'm handling and maintaining this sweater. But all in all, I loved it. I loved everything about it. And there definitely are substitutes for some of these yarns that you could pick. I know Young Folk Knits has a really great video all about substitutes for spin cycle yarns because they can be quite expensive. I thought the Magpie yarn that I used was very nice and definitely something that I would purchase again, but it was very expensive, I would say. I think it was like $30-some for a skein. And there's definitely cheaper alternatives out there. I think even like the Juniper Moon Patagonia yarn, it's a very similar type of yarn. It's non-superwash, it's all natural wool, and it could give you a very similar effect for a lower price range. And then the silk mohair, again, I use Malabrigo. You could literally use anything that you like. It was middle of the road in terms of price. Not something that I have a very strong opinion about either way. I think it gave the effect that I wanted, and you could use pretty much anything. Moving on, I have some finished Sophie scarves. I have this orange one that I held double with my La Bienne Amy yarn in RG Tomato, and then the fuzzy Surrey that I'm holding with this is from the Lamb Kid, and it's their Diamond Lane Birdie yarn in fingering. And then I think you've seen the red one already, but the red is definitely my favorite. I definitely wear that a lot, especially now that it's cooled down in Washington. The orange one I made slightly shorter than the red one, and I have some footage of me wearing them and tying them in different ways, just giving you some basic ideas about what you could do. These were a joy. What I really loved most about these is you could easily make a much bigger scarf and essentially do the Sophie shawl, which is essentially a much bigger scarf version of this. I mean, all you would have to do is continue increasing until you hit the width that you really want, and then you would start decreasing. And if you're increasing / decreasing on the even number of rows, so always increasing or decreasing on an even numbered row, so for this pattern it was always row 8, you're always going to have your increases falling on the same side. And then likewise, you'll have your decreases falling on the same side. And that's what gives you that really straight, smooth increase look that comes with these scarves. On this one, the orange one, you can actually see a little bit where it's not quite, it's a little bit crooked. And that's because I probably miscounted when I was supposed to do my increase or decrease. And so it just ends up looking a little bit funny. Blocking usually takes care of it, but just take note of that when you're making these. But highly recommend. These are great. Hey, chill out. Chill out. What are you doing? Lie down. Lie down. On me. Okay. The last finished object that I have is just the red scarf for my friend's son. The only thing I wish I had done differently about this was added a nicer edge. I wish I had done like a I-cord edge rather than just, I didn't do anything for the edges. I just had a 3 knit, 3 purl repeat. So the rib pattern here. And I think it looks fine, you know, but in hindsight, I wish the edge was a little bit nicer. Just, that's my own personal thing. I don't think her son or even her will notice that as like a flaw in like what I did. But I did tassels. It's super cute. I need to cast on the other ones. the navy blue and the mustard colored sweater for her other 2 boys, but just haven't gotten to it because, as you'll see in a minute, I have a lot of works in progresses, which is what I'm going to talk about next. The last time we talked about my Fjelltur Lite, I believe was episode 2, and I hadn't finished the body yet. I have now finished the body. So I'm at the point where I need to do the sleeves bottom up and then join the sleeves and the bottom part of the body all together and then work up and do the yoke and do the color work. I have the sweater cuff here. I haven't gotten very far. This is the first one. I've just done a little bit. It's going to be pretty, it's going to be toasty warm. This is not something that's going to have a lot of airiness to it. Like, it's going to be pretty fitted to my body, which obviously she's based in Germany, so it's cold there. So this is going to be a very warm sweater, definitely something for winter time. And maybe that's why I haven't been super motivated to finish it, even though I've started it so long ago. But it's on in the background, and I've been working on it. And this is how far I've gotten. So I don't really have anything to say about this. I haven't made any modifications yet to this pattern, so more on this to come. Probably what I've made the most amount of progress on is something you haven't seen yet, but did mention, I think, that my mom and I decided to cast on Andrea Mowry's Tessellated Vest, and we're doing it together, which is just so stinking cute. Mom's colors are inspired by blueberry fields, and so her base is white. Her Siri thread that she's carrying with it is like a rich blueberry blue, and then her spin cycle contrast color is like greens, purples, and blues, and it's just gorgeous. Mine is basically just colors I like. Hopefully the color's coming up okay for you guys here. Back a little bit more. But I've gotten pretty good amount done on the body. I'm not quite sure how much I have left to do for the body, but I chose white for my base. The spin cycle I used was Grumpy Birds, and then the Surrey I used was the Farmer Daughters Surrey in like their mustard color. I will put the actual names of what I used in the description box because I'm really not good at remembering names of things. This has been a really fun knit. It's been very addictive. I think it's not a traditional color work. It's actually mosaic knitting, so you get the effect of color work, but you're only knitting with one strand at any given time. And so I think that's a really nice way if you're maybe a bit uncomfortable doing color work, because you get a very intense color work motif, but it's very easy to manage because the only thing you have to do is carry your other 2 threads with you up the back, which you can kind of see here where that line is being carried up. And you do have to be careful not to pull too tight or wrap too many times because it will affect your tension, but all in all, it's a really easy way to introduce yourself to color work. So I recommend the pattern for that. I think it's a trendy knit. Lots of people are doing it. I think if you have a really good color motif, it actually is a pretty classic looking pattern. Like, to me, far away, this reminds me of like houndstooth almost, and I've been really enjoying that. I think I said a couple of videos ago that I was a little bit not super thrilled with the white base, mostly the combination of the price of it and it being superwash. It just wasn't feeling super great in my hands, and I will say I'm always happy to admit when I'm slightly wrong. This is very soft to the touch, and my mom did block the bottom portion of hers to see how the fit would be on her. And I will say that after she blocked it and the yarn bloomed, it was much nicer, much softer. It wasn't as plasticky feeling or whatnot. It was just very soft, very fluffy. It was really nice. So I think I was just maybe used to knitting with like super rustic yarns, and I wasn't quite used to that very different feeling of a superwashed, really soft, but almost processed feeling yarn. So, I'm anxious to see what this washes up to be like. I think it'll be really nice and just something that's very different from what I've done in the past. I haven't really ever used yarns like this before. My very first video, you can see that I use a lot of rustic yarns. I've used a lot of farm type yarns. And so this was just very new for me, but it's growing on me. It's really growing on me. This next two I haven't gotten very far on. It's been a really busy summer and I've been trying to, get as much done as I can, but I haven't gotten very far. So there's that. The next one I'm going to talk about is my Talvinen sweater. I'm using the Rauma Phenol yarns for this, and I've literally just got a collar for this. I do intend to do a folded over hem for this before getting into the color work motif. And on camera, the color of this is like exactly what it is in real life. It's just my favorite thing. I think it's so rich. I'm really loving the Rauma Phenol yarn. It's a really great, slightly cheaper version of the yarn that this pattern was originally designed in, which is I'm going to pronounce it wrong, I know it, so correct me in the comments, but the Biches and Bouches, Les Petites Lambs Wool. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. But this is a really great alternative, I think, if you can get it near you. It is Norwegian, so if you don't have a supplier in the US or wherever you are, it can be a little pricey because of shipping. But I've been loving this. And so far, the only thing I'm going to change about it is the folded over collar. I forget what cast on she calls for, but I knew I wanted to do a folded over collar, and so I just did a tubular cast on because it's going to be hidden completely with the fold. Hopefully, this will be more complete the next time you see me. The last thing I have to talk about is something that I literally have just casted on a couple days ago, and it is my Ingrid Vest by Petite Knit. It's almost embarrassing to call this a work in progress because I haven't even worked on it. I have no progress. It's just kind of a thing that I've casted on, but I'm really excited about the yarn. It's from Wing and the Prayer Farm, which is a really beautiful farm natural yarn dyer who always attends Rhinebeck every year. But this yarn base is from, what is it? It's Wilbur and Fluffhead who make this. And it's 80% alpaca and 20% wool. So it just has it's very, very soft, but it still feels very rustic and fluffy, and the alpaca gives it that nice bloom to it. I think it's going to be really pretty as the Ingrid Vest. And I had an awkward amount of it. I wasn't really sure what I would have enough to make with it, but I've casted that on. I need to actually do some work on it because fall has snuck up on us, and she's coming. She's here pretty much. It's gray and rainy out today. So yeah, that's my work in progress for that. That's the last bit that I have for everybody. I haven't been buying anything new. I have a lot of yarn that could be used for a lot of different projects, and so I don't really have anything planned out that isn't on my needles. There's a couple things that I'll cast on when I get a little bit more progress on some of the things that I've already talked about. So that's kind of it for this video. I'm not quite sure. I'm hoping to get some feedback from you all on this, but I think for me, I'm feeling like realistically I have updates that I would consider worth talking about like once a month. I work a full-time job, I have a full life, and I wish I could just sit and work on these things all the time and share them with you, but unfortunately, things just don't change that fast. So I'm feeling like I want to release one of these podcasts, sit down, check in on the progress and my thoughts on some of these things once a month, and then maybe fill the rest of the month with a couple other things that are also things that you want to hear me talk about, but aren't directly tied to, projects that I'm actually working on. So let me know if there's things you want me to talk about, if there's things you want me to, I don't know, do in terms of video making and talking about things on this channel, just let me know. Like I said, the video that I did last week, very, very different than this kind of a video, but I really enjoyed that, and some of you seem to really enjoy that as well. There's lots and lots of things to make in this world, so just let me know. I'm happy to give pretty much anything a go. Just let me know. If you're happy with this and this is what you want to see, I'll just keep doing this. And then maybe if, I'm struck with a burst of creativity to make something else, I will. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for watching. I really, really, really do appreciate it so much. It's just I look forward to when I get to put a video out and I get to talk with some of you and see some of your comments. A couple of you have reached out to me on Instagram, and that's been something that I don't take lightly. I feel just like this community is very special. And so anyone who wants to participate in it, you're all welcome here. So thank you for watching. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up and give it a subscribe. And if not, maybe I'll see you around. But for now, I'm gonna sign off and keep working on things, keep living my life. And I hope you do the same. You're all happy wherever you are and getting to do the things that make you happy. So with that, bye. Is it recording now? Yeah, because the red.
Oh, yeah.
Wait, so how do I stop it? Just this button?